I've decided that today is the day where I finally learn how to play the tabletop side of Warhammer 40k. So I'm gonna check out this video by Play on Tabletop that apparently explains everything when it comes to the latest edition, which I believe is 10th edition. I also know for a fact that Warhammer Fantasy is played a little bit differently, so maybe later on I might check out a video about that as well. But as always, before we continue, make sure to go support the OG creators. Link to the OG video will be at the top of the description. If there is something that I'm misunderstanding, please feel free to leave in the comments. I have learned most of the lore that I currently know from the comments, and yeah, I really appreciate you guys helping me on my journey to learning Warhammer. So without further ado, let's get right into this.
Warhammer 40,000, story set in a grimdark universe where there is only war.
We even have a little bit of animation going on. That's cute.
This is a tabletop strategy war game where you can bring to life a force all your own and play it against a friend or a rival.
Having a full set like this would be so cool, man. Incredibly expensive, though.
I'm the voice of 40k in 40 minutes, and I am joined by fellow Play on Tabletop members Nick and Tack, and together we are going to learn how to play Warhammer 40,000, a game that we all love.
I've heard the Tyranids are OP. Even with all the nerfs, they're still pretty OP. We'll see how this goes.
To kick off what is affectionately known as the 10th edition of Warhammer 40,000, we will be using the Leviathan set that pits a force of iconic space marines fighting for the future of humanity against the Tyranids, a race of foul Xenos that threaten all life in the known galaxy. In this video, we will start.
When he says set, does that mean that it comes included with all of the minis and also the battlefield and stuff like that? That it's like a particular battle that they're trying to simulate with this set that's sold? I guess that would make sense, and yeah, it would make for some pretty cool scenarios. I'm also assuming you could likely just use those minis in a different battle as well.
With a quick 8-minute basic rules and concepts overview before we dive into a demo game. Warhammer 40,000 is a strategy war game where you test your own army against an opponent and score victory points based on objectives. The miniatures that represent the heroes, soldiers, and vehicles you play in this game come unassembled, and you can enjoy countless hours building and painting your army and making it your own. Your army will...
Dude. This is definitely going to require a lot of practice if I ever end up doing anything like this. You guys did share some of your experiences when I reacted to Bricky's video about the miniatures and like the game itself. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's not too difficult once you get the hang of it. And I think the Space Marines are also pretty easy to paint as well.
Will be worth a number of points, and your opponent will bring a force to test against yours worth up to the same number of points. An army must have a leader, and there are some other rules to building an army we will go over a bit later. You need to arm yourself with a measuring device of some kind, which you will use to move your units and determine if a weapon is in range to fire. And of course,
it's counted in inches,
dice
right?
Will determine the results of your actions. Whether your dice are successful or not will be determined by stats on the unit data cards and the core rules. Oh, and also a little bit of your own luck. For our demo game today, we are having a city. I
believe in Warhammer you only use a D6. I'd incorrectly assumed that you'd have like a bunch of different kinds of die. Because I was also getting to D&D, and there, yeah, you have a ton of different kinds.
Fight. The armies are fighting in the streets of this ruined hive city. We've put down a map which is pre-cut to the 60-inch by 44-inch recommended battlefield size, and then scattered this terrain fairly evenly on top. You will need to determine a mission for your game. In today's game, we will use the cards from the Leviathan box set. Each mission card will tell you how to set up the game, where your objective markers will be placed, and what you need to do to score victory points. You will need something to mark these objectives on the battlefield. Finally, to accompany the units you brought to the game, you will need their index cards, your faction rules, and the core rulebook. Here is a summary of all the things you want to have to play a proper game of...
Okay, before we get into this, I guess, well, from a Total War perspective, I could probably see this as like playing a domination game in Total War. You have to maneuver your units, you have to capture certain points, and then once you have them, you have to hold them. Don't know if it's like hold them for a certain amount of time. I didn't read that little sheet in time. Or if you just have to have like a turn number, then have the majority of points by the end of the game.
Warhammer 40,000. Warhammer 40,000 is a game where you and your opponent take turns activating your entire force before passing turn over to your opponent to do the same. You will be utilizing your force through 5 phases. There's the command phase, the movement phase, the shooting phase, the charge phase, and the fight.
There used to be another phase, or maybe 1 or 2 other phases. I think there was also like some sort of psyker phase. But from what you guys told me, they removed that in the later editions to make the game a bit more streamlined.
Phase. In the command phase, you will be activating some abilities as well as scoring points.
Okay, let me read this. Score 5 victory points for each objective marker you hold at the end of your command phase. Up to 15 victory points per turn. Ah, okay. Maximum you can get is 15, so even if you hold 4 victory points, that's all you're gonna get? Well, as long as you're holding them by the end of your command phase.
If casualties were taken in the previous turn, you may also have to take a battle shock test. This is a test you don't want to fail. In the movement phase, your entire army moves.
Okay, so movement, that's 5 inches. It's the most that they can move within 1 turn. I'm probably getting ahead of myself here, but I did hear the fact that you could, like, load your units into vehicles and stuff. I wonder how that would change things. It's probably like, oh, this vehicle has a certain amount of movement that it can do. That's probably more than them being on foot. And then you could just shift all of your units there.
In the shooting phase, you get to use the ranged weapons and psychic might of your units.
In the shooting phase, okay, so the psychic phase is also in the shooting phase now. This has a range of 24. I still don't really have any idea what the A, the BS, the S, A, P, and D stand for. There's also some keywords here like devastating wounds, hazardous, psychic. As a card game player, I know how important all of these keywords can be, but I suppose I'll just have to wait and see this in action to really understand it.
In the charge phase, you can attempt to close in on your enemies in order to fight in melee or melee, depending on who you talk to. And in the fight phase, it's time for Power Fist, Claws, and the iconic Chainsword. The information you need to use your units will be on the data card. Let's give it a quick look. To move your models in the movement phase, you will find the maximum move distance they can go in inches here under M for movement. This Ballistus Dreadnought is lumbering up the board 8 inches to set up his shot.
Gotcha.
Ranged weapons are listed here on the Dreadnought's profile. We're going to fire his mighty Ballistus Las Cannon. The range determines the maximum distance the weapon can reach. The horrifying Screamer Killer is in range to be hit.
Okay, I wonder if you have to choose a specific weapon to fire, if they have multiple different kinds of ranged weapons, or if you can fire all of them.
A is for attacks, and this is the number of dice you can roll. In this case, we have 2 dice to roll. BS stands for ballistic skill, and this determines your success. If the die you roll is equal to or exceeds the ballistic skill, you score a hit.
Oh, gotcha.
Back roll the 5 and a 2. The 5 exceeds 3+ ballistic skill, so it's a hit, while the 2 is lower than the 3+, and it misses.
So that's a miss.
S is for strength, and we compare the weapon's strength to the target's toughness to determine success.
Okay, strength against toughness. Toughness is T right there, I'm assuming, which would be 9. So if you rolled 12, that would be 3 damage?
Unit has toughness you see here below the T. If the attack strength is equal to the target toughness, you need a 4+ to wound, a 50-50.
Attack strength versus target's toughness. Strength is equal to the toughness, then a D6 result is required. So you have to roll, so it's a 50-50 chance. Okay, I see. Gotcha. Apologies if, he's explaining this. He does explain things very succinctly, but there's just so much information right now that I'm trying to absorb, so and I don't want to miss anything.
Shot. If the weapon strength exceeds the toughness of the target, you need a 3+ to wound, so it's easier to wound. And if the strength is less than the target toughness, you need a 5+, which is harder.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
When a weapon strength doubles the toughness of a target, you can wound on a 2+. And if it's half or less of the target toughness, only a 6 will wound.
I guess this would simulate a situation where you're using a lower grade weapon in order to fight a very tough enemy, but you roll very, very good, so you get like a lucky shot into their eye or something, and then we'll end up wounding them. I guess it's a pretty cool system, yeah.
Note, a 1 will always fail and a 6 will always succeed. Here, the Screamer Killer has a toughness of 9 and the Las Cannon strength is 12. so Tak will successfully wound on a 3+, which he does on a wound roll of 3. The AP, or armor penetration value of the last cannon, is -3. This worsens the save the target model can take. Normally, this Screamer Killer has a save listed here as 2+. However, because the AP of the last cannon worsens saves by 3, the Screamer Killer's armor will only block the wound on a 5 or better. Ooh, Nick has rolled a 4 and has failed his save roll. That means the Screamer Killer's armor is ineffective against the last cannon shot. D, or damage, is how much damage you inflict on the enemy target for each successful wound roll. The last cannon does d6 +1 damage. Tak rolls a single die, and the result of that die +1 is how much damage the Screamer Killer will take. A big 6! Ouch! The Screamer Killer takes 7 damage.
Alright, starting wounds 10, minus attack damage 7, remaining wounds 3. Okay, so I suppose wounds in this case is like its health, and then once it loses all of those wounds, then that model dies. Dang, so many rolls you gotta do to just pull off one attack.
To find out how many wounds a unit has, you check the W, or wound stat. The Screamer Killer started the game with 10 wounds. Now, after taking 7 damage, it will be limping around with 3 wounds remaining. As this is below half the total wounds it started with, it will have to take a Battle Shock test in its next command phase.
Battle Shock test. Take a test for each unit in your army that is below half strength. Roll 2d6 and compare with leadership of unit. If the result is greater or equal, the unit passes. Oh, so this is basically like leadership breaking in Total War, right? I would presume the Skaven would have like a lower leadership value. I mean, that's in Warhammer Fantasy. I don't know if they have a similar system. They probably do. But maybe your unit just ends up becoming unresponsive or like retreating from the battlefield if they are unable to pass this leadership test.
A Battle Shock test is 2d6, or 6-sided dice, rolled together. If the value exceeds the leadership stat here under LD, the unit has passed the test and won't be battle shocked. A battle shocked unit won't be functioning as optimally as normal, so you don't want to fail these rolls. An important aspect of the game is the ability to claim and control objectives.
What do you mean by not function as optimally? I guess we'll get into that later, maybe.
A unit's effectiveness to do so is shown by the OC, or Objective Control Stat. The Screamer Killer has a 3, and if it fails the Battle Shock test, it will go to 0 while it is Battle Shocked.
Oh, okay.
Going back to weapons really quickly, some have keywords associated with them. The ballistic...
Okay, Objective Control. That's like, if you have a higher objective control, then maybe all the units within that area, you just add that objective control value up, and then you determine who actually holds that objective from that. But if it's battle shocked, it goes down to 0, so it doesn't count at all, so.
This Dreadnought can also fire the twin Stormbolter it's equipped with, which is Rapid Fire 2, meaning in half of the weapon's maximum range, it can fire an extra 2 shots. Twin Linked means it can reroll the wound rolls in case any fail to wound the first time.
I see.
These universal rule keywords are explained in the core rulebook. Units can also have special abilities in this column here. Core abilities you will find in the core rulebook. Faction denotes if a unit can be affected by the faction's army rule. Other special abilities will be listed here too. Some units, like the Dreadnought, will function worse when its health is low. A damaged Dreadnought that has 1 to 4 wounds remaining will have its weapon accuracy reduced. On the back of your unit's card, you will find your war gear options that allow you to customize the loadout of your unit and the unit composition. This tells you how many models are in a unit, and in the case of a leader, what units they can join.
Gotcha.
The models on the table are not the only things you will be using to try to win the battle. A powerful currency in the game of Warhammer 40,000 are command points, which you can spend on using stratagems. Stratagems are situational special abilities you can activate when you want, if you have the necessary command points to spend. There are a number of core stratagems in the rulebook everyone has access to, as well as faction-specific stratagems. One core strategy.
Whenever I see CP, I think immediately of Mechanicus with its cognition points. And honestly, you could use that to like use up some prayers and stuff, which is kind of similar, I feel like.
Stratagem is Fire Overwatch. That allows you to elect one of your units to fire their range weapons if they are being charged or an enemy has moved too close. This costs you 1 command point. You gain 1 command point in yours and your opponent's command phase. In the demo game, Tak and Nick will show you how to use your units in each of the phases, and will also use stratagems to try and gain an advantage in the game. One of the many thrills of this game is learning and then utilizing the right moves and decisions to maximize your turn before passing it over to your opponent for their turn. You and your opponent will be running for objectives, vying for board control, shooting devastating futuristic weapons across the field, or charging into close-range combat over the maximum course of 5 battle rounds.
Okay, I suppose this is different depending on the size of the battle.
Perhaps don't play with stratagems right away, or limit the number of models and units you play with at first. You can tailor the experience to what is comfortable for you and your opponent. We cannot cover every single rule or go into too much detail on all the rules we play in this one video. With that said,
for sure,
I think we should see the game played. Tyranids versus Ultramarines. Nick versus Tack. Let's go!
All right, let's see it. Definitely hands-on experience is the way to learn.
I am tremendously excited to start 10th edition with UTAC today. We get to learn a brand new edition, brand new armies, new units. Everything's really cool, and
I have been collecting Ultramarines, well, for a very long time, and the Leviathan box set is just all new Space Marines, and the return of some classics.
They look really
which I'm
good.
really excited for. So the point of today's demo game is really to bring the audience along with us as we learn the game and go through the steps on how to play a game of Warhammer 40,000.
To play a Leviathan chapter-approved battle, you do things in the following sequence.
The first thing that we need to do is we need to muster our force, and because we're playing the Leviathan box set, they've already done that for us. We get to play exactly what they gave us in the box set. I'm playing the Gladius Strike Force. Right now, that's the only detachment that the Space Marines have. I'm sure there'll be more. By taking a Gladius Strike Force, I get special army rules. I'm going to have access to doctrines, and I choose a doctrine to use for a turn of the game. And I also have Oza Moment, and you're going to need to watch out for Oza Moment because that allows re-rolls against a specific target.
I'm playing the Tyranid Invasion Fleet, which gives me a special hyper adaptation. I get to choose one of 3 bonuses to my army. I'm choosing Swarming Instincts, which allows me to get sustained hits against infantry. Pretty powerful against your army.
Because most of it is infantry, except I do have 1 Dreadnought.
I think that was one of the reasons why the Tyranids were just so powerful, is because they could kind of tailor their army to be better against yours, which, it makes sense when it comes to the Tyranids and their lore and stuff. Like, obviously they would adapt to overcome their enemies. That's just kind of their thing.
Building a roster in 10th edition is actually pretty easy. Start by selecting a leader to be the warlord of your army. I've chosen the Winged Tyranid Prime.
As the players say here, the first unit you need when mustering your forces is a leader. You will find the leader keyword here.
The first leader that I'm bringing with my force is the Captain Terminator armor, and will also be my warlord.
Single models or multiple models may make up a unit, which will act together when you activate them.
Making the majority of the troops in this list are 2 squads of Infernus Primaris Space Marines.
The Infernus squad with their Pyre Blasters are great for taking out infantry units.
I'm really excited about the new Stern Guard vets.
They're cool.
They are really cool.
The Stern Guard veterans are equipped with a multitude of different weapons, all of which you can find on their profiles on their data sheet.
I have a Apothecary Biologus. I actually don't know how I'm going to use him. He does have a neat trick, but he's not a medic anymore.
Apothecary Biologus would definitely be a medic, but interesting. What are we going with here?
An apothecary should not be confused with a medic. This one is responsible for staying on the battlefield and recovering the gene seeds of his fallen comrades.
I also have a...
Oh. Okay. Recover the gene seeds of your fallen comrades and then do what with it exactly? Oh, we even have a Librarian and Terminator armor. Isn't this basically just like the crew that went into Space Hulk?
The Librarian and Terminator armor.
This Librarian benefits the squad he can be attached to, but by himself he can bring the pain with psychic attacks. He can unleash these attacks in the shooting phase. Terminators are great at close combat or ranged attacks. They're also very tough with 3 wounds and toughness 5, as seen here on their datasheet. The Lieutenant has many keywords that you can see here that will help him to survive on his own on the battlefield. Stealth means he's -1 to be hit by range attacks, and Lone Operative means you must be within 12 inches to fire ranged weapons at him.
And what I'm really excited for, because I love painting dreadnoughts, I have the brand new Ballistus Dreadnought.
The Ballistus Dreadnought is Tack's big gun. Look at the strength of that las cannon. Look to see that weapon aimed at Nick's big monsters.
My Winged Tyranid Prime is going to be my warlord, and usually I would try to attach it to a unit. However, the units that he can attach to are not present in this box set, so he's actually going to be all by himself, which unfortunately means that if he's in the open, you'll be able to shoot him. I've got 2 squads of 10 Termagants. They are basically short-range shooting swarm bugs.
Nick's Termagants are the battle line troops in his force. When making an army, you can only have 3 of any one data sheet. You cannot bring 4 Screamer Killers, for instance. However, as a battle line unit, Nick could field 6 squads of Termagants if he wanted to.
I've also got a brand new unit, the Neuro Tyranids.
I see. So they're kind of like the chaff units, basically, which is why you can field more of them than usual.
Some units, like this Neurotyrant, augment and give out a benefit to units beyond what it's attached to.
It's a brain bug. It's a psychically attuned abilities, and it basically kills things and makes my guys better. It's actually going to be attached to a unit of Neurogons that are going to act as this bodyguard, and they're actually going to buff each other to be able to increase my synapse. I've also got a unit of 5 Barbgons. These guys are actually some of my best firepower.
The Barbgons are Nick's main guns. Look for him to use their ranged weapons to soften up the enemy as his main force moves up the table to bring the pain up close.
My Von Ryan Leapers are kind of fun. Not only are they great at close combat, but they have the ability to deploy outside of my deployment zone.
Von Ryan's Leapers have infiltrate, so they can be deployed outside the deployment zone and outside of 9 inches from any of TAC's units.
Which means I...
Okay, so it's like Vanguard deployment. Cool. And also all these different kind of Tyranids just make me want to learn more about them. They seem to be like very specific to their job, and I'm sure that there's like just common types, but in lore, I'm gonna assume that maybe you're gonna see like new types all the time because of them adapting to their environment and like learning how to fight against their enemy.
I can take full advantage of stealing objectives early on in the game. I have 2 little gribbly units of Rippers. They're basically swarm units that come in and just annoy you. They don't do a lot of damage. They don't hold objectives. They just annoy you. I've also got a Psychophage.
Like
this is a brand new unit in the box set. It buffs all my units around me, making them a bit more survivable, and it has some decent shooting.
The Psychophage is also a Psyker Killer, as you can see the anti-Psyker keyword on his weapons. That means it'll do a critical wound when it rolls that number on a dice. TAC will want to keep his Librarian, his Psyker, away from that unit.
My Screamer Killer is probably the coolest miniature in this pack. It's big, it's nasty, it's got huge claws. If I can get him in and slice you up, oh, it's gonna be good.
The Screamer Killer will melt Marines with his ranged weapons and his melee attack. It has a lot of wounds, as you can see here, and is fairly high toughness. Should allow it to survive as it runs up the battlefield towards TAC's forces.
Okay,
Step
cool.
2 is to determine a mission. For that, we are using the deployment deck, mission rule deck, primary mission deck, secondary mission deck, and gambit decks in the Leviathan box set. You will determine the game's deployment, mission rules, and primary mission by randomly pulling cards from these decks. Third step is to read and understand the missions, and step 4, you will place the objective markers in accordance to the deployment deck rules.
Now, what we want to do is we want to get acquainted with the mission that we're playing. So we're doing Dawn of War deployment. So we've got this long edge is mine, that long edge is yours.
Dawn of War deployment? As in like the game Dawn of War? Or is the game Dawn of War in reference to the rule set here? Or maybe it's just a cool name. Who knows?
Good luck.
Good luck to you too.
I've got more guys than you.
You do. I am outnumbered and it may be pretty tough. Primary mission today is taking hold. From the second battle round, we get to score the primary mission. You score 5 points for holding 1 objective, 5 points for holding 2 objectives, 5 points for holding 3.
The primary mission tells you how both players will be scoring victory points. The mission rules will provide added rules that augment the game.
The mission rule that we pulled, luckily, was Chilling Rain. Just means that no other effect is in play.
Step 5 is to create the battlefield. Today we are playing on a 60-inch by 44-inch battlefield. Rules for the terrain are found in the core rulebook.
We've already placed the objective markers. We've already created the battlefield just to make it a little bit easier on us as we're going through this game.
Step 6, we determine attacker and defender, and the winner decides which they want to be, and this will impact deployment and which card deck they get.
So we roll for attacker and defender?
We do.
Here we go.
All right,
you
so
get
I
it.
win. So now it's a choice. I get to choose if I'm the attacker and defender. Really what that comes down to is who deploys first, and I'm going to choose to be the defender.
Once you've chosen attacker and defender, go to step 7, which is selecting the secondary missions. While the primary mission has objectives both players need to do to score victory points, the secondary mission objectives are unique to each player. Each player can choose to play fixed missions or tactical missions. In fixed missions, you select 2 secondary missions to score in every round of the game. And in tactical missions, you will be randomly pulling secondary missions and scoring them once the game begins.
This is actually really cool. It really is just like playing a game, but on the tabletop. Also, question for you tabletop players out there. Do you guys roleplay? I have a feeling that this very much lends to the roleplay aspect, and like losing units can be like incredibly devastating, and I don't know, you can just play along with that, you know? It just seems like a really fun time, as long as everybody understands how it works.
Time to declare reserves and transport. So those are the models that are going to deploy off the board or in a transport.
So the Terminator captain that is attached to the Terminators is going to use the Deep Strike rule that allows it to be in reserves to start the game.
Deep Strike means Terminators can appear on the battlefield over 9 inches away from an enemy unit. The captain's benefit of the reroll charge, there's more of a chance that they'll be able to make it into the fight.
I've also got the Librarian Terminator armor,
cool.
also using Deep Strike, also going in reserves.
I'm also going to take advantage of Deep Strike.
So you could utilize that in order to deploy them whenever a situation might be looking bad, or if a particular flank looks weak and you want to break through it, then you could just, you know, pop them out of reserve, deep strike them, and then have them in range with their weaponry ready to go.
And these Termagants are going to deploy right in the line, ready to rush forward and shoot you. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind when doing larger units is unit coherency. Every model has to be within 2 inches of another model in that unit.
Your plan is to rush forward?
Oh, yes.
Unit coherency. So it's kind of like they're moving around in squads. Okay, gotcha. And then I guess it's pseudo kind of like a formation that you would have in Total War with like 80 models within one unit. And it's also probably the same, actually. Like if you roll, then you lose a particular model within a unit, then that model dies because, you know, it suffers all its wounds, but you still have the other ones that are able to shoot.
I'm not being subtle here.
I want to barbecue any bugs that rush forward towards me.
Okay.
Back to me, and I think it's time to put the Von Ryan Leapers, and they will go up front in no man's land.
Infiltrators can deploy outside your deployment zone, but must be 9 inches away from enemy units and enemy deployment zone. Okay, gotcha.
I think it's time for the scariest beastie in this box set, the Screamer Killer. He screams as he kills you. It's gonna go right here. I think in this game, I would really like to go first because I just want to rush up and get as close to you as possible, as soon as possible before you shoot me.
And I've got fairly long range guns, so I would actually like to go first as well to try to whittle down the forces that are coming at me.
Highest dice wins. I got a 4.
And I got a 2. Oh no.
Oh, that means...
Actually, if we're gonna do a roll afterwards anyways, then what is the point of selecting like attacker and defender earlier? I suppose it's all about like being able to place your models first, whether you want to be, I suppose, leading or you want to be reactive to how your opponent positions the army. Maybe that's the significance of it.
Command phase is first. That's where commandy things happen.
Commandy?
It's a term.
Commandy things, yeah.
First thing you get is we each get a command point. This is a very important resource that are very precious. You don't get much of them, and they allow you to do stratagems. We're each going to get one at the beginning of every command phase. The next thing we do is any units that have abilities that trigger in the command phase. All Tyranid models get a special rule called Synapse. As long as I'm in range of some of my leader bugs, it basically allows me to roll 3d6 instead of 2d6 when I do battle shock tests, which is really powerful.
God.
And very unlikely that I'll ever be suffering from battle shock.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like it helps calm their nerves, basically, and they're kind of a hive mind, so yeah, that makes sense. In my mind, this is probably comparable to a leadership aura effect.
You're forcing my hand a little bit here, Nick. Fire Overwatch is a stratagem for one command point, and it allows me to elect a unit in either the movement phase or when I'm charged to fire at you. You've moved into range of my Inferno squad. I could choose to fire Overwatch now. However, I see a lot of other things coming, and I know you've got a Tyranid Prime. It hurts me to do this, but I think I'm going to hold off.
Okay, well, I'm going to continue moving then. So I'm actually going to...
Interesting. So you can use stratagems reactively, and you don't have to like put your units into Overwatch on your turn and then see if they move. I kind of assumed that because I was thinking XCOM terms of like Overwatch, but this seems a lot more fun that way. And obviously, if you're playing against a player, then yeah, they would know that you put your units in Overwatch and just not go for you.
Because Termagants have the infantry keyword, they can just move through walls of ruins as if they're not there. They're assumed to be going through windows or breaking holes in walls or whatever they need to do.
Oh, and I can just interesting. The infantry keyword. It's cool that there are keywords that apply specifically to like different kinds of terrain as well. And I'm assuming if there were like other weather conditions, that those weather conditions would apply.
Luckily, I got a 10. They are not battle shocked. They are okay. they can still function normally.
If I had
one
managed
guy.
to battle shock them,
It is what
they
it
would
is.
not be able to receive stratagems, which means you wouldn't be able to do the Overwatch stratagem on them, and that would have been great for me.
Oh, you can't
And my
even use
OC goes to
stratagems
0.
either.
And your OC would go to 0. Yes. I'm gonna go next with the Barbgons. There's only 3 of them in range of your Flamer squad there. I still want to kill those Flamer squads. I think they're a big threat. They also get a random amount of shots, D6 shots each.
Okay, yeah. Worth noting that it's measured to the model and not the squad. Measured to the model, not unit. Yeah.
I'm going to show how many wounds it has remaining, which is 1, and put it beside a Space Marine that has taken a wound.
These Barbgons also have a special rule when they shoot at something.
Okay, cool.
Their rule is called Disruptive Bombardment, which means if they hit something, that unit is now -2 to its movement characteristics, -2 to advance rolls, -2 to charge rolls.
That is rough
Oh my
because they need to
God.
get into the fight, and now that you've made that a lot tougher for them to do so.
Yeah.
And that's an effect till the
I mean, they're taking artillery fire. That makes sense.
I got 2 hits. One of them, however, is a critical hit, triggers sustained hits, which gives me an extra
So
hit.
add another one?
Strength of the weapon is 5, which is more than your toughness of 4, which means I'm gonna wound on a 3. I have 2 wounds and 1 fail.
Nice.
3 up, here we go.
Oh, you got 1.
Fail 1. Once you've taken a wound on a model, that model has to continue to take wounds until it's dead, and then another model can take a wound. Unfortunately, I failed 1, so the 1 dies.
Now on my
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, it just makes things a lot easier to calculate rather than, you know, having a wound on every single model. Oh man, that would go out of control, especially in a larger game than this.
we move on to the charge phase. In the charge phase, I choose units within 12 inches to try to attempt to charge in and fight you. Leapers are going to declare a charge against those Stern Guard.
Spending the 1 command point on the Stratagem Fire Overwatch, and I'm going to do that with the Infernus Squad here, trying to whittle down charging unit Von Ryan Leapers before they crash into my line. Equipped with Power Blasters, do
Okay,
6
good.
shots each, Torrent, ignore cover.
Oh,
So you're not going to get the cover save bonus. D6 for each weapon, there's 3 of them, so 3 is
oh, there we go.
10, 13.
The cover save bonus, is it because they're in that specific terrain that they get a cover save bonus? I guess it's kind of like in XCOM when you go behind like a full cover, half cover, then you can roll a save there, or it gives you like a buff. I don't think they explained it yet in this video.
So
yeah,
one of these guys are dead, and I'm going to take the guy way off in the back here. Ah!
You're making a charge. You roll
Yes.
2d6.
Roll 2 dice, and that's how many.
Charge move, add both dice to determine the maximum distance to move, must reach the engagement range of 1 inch of the target, and must touch base to base if possible. In order to just make sure that you know that they're in melee. Gotcha.
Enemy unit. If you can base, you must base.
More than 9 inches away from you, so I got to get a 9 to get within that 1 inch engagement range.
Okay, see if you do it.
5, 6, 7, 8. I
8?
fail. That is so
Oh.
close.
Oh, if distance not adequate to reach target, the charge fails and the unit does not move. Ah, I see. Okay. So you can't just, you wouldn't utilize this all the time. And this rule makes sense, else you would also just use this phase in order to move every single unit you have forward.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's enough.
Oh
It's
my
in.
God.
Yes.
Oh.
Nom, 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 nom. Hey, oh, it looks like chicken. And the fight phase is going to happen right now. All models that are in
phase is
engagement
melee,
range of each
yeah.
other get to fight. You alternate going back and forth, choosing miniatures that are in engagement range to fight. It actually starts with the defending player by charging my models now.
Oh, okay. Attack and defense has more than just placing models. It also applies to these specific scenarios as well. Units that have fights first or gained it by completing a charge in the previous phase will fight first. Okay, so if you charge, then you should get it. The attack off first. But I wonder if a specific unit has fights first and then it gets charged by another unit that gains that, then what would happen there? Maybe I guess if you're the defending unit, then you get to get it first, or maybe you do a roll. I don't know.
Damage doesn't spill over to another model.
Kill the guy, but the extra damage doesn't do me any good. When I
Oh, okay. That's unfortunate. I guess that makes sense. It's kind of like overkilling one guy rather than, you know, just ricocheting and hitting another guy for whatever reason. Yeah, good to get a model off the field, I suppose.
and you don't have anybody in range, so I control his objectives. I satisfy this objective. I gain
Get
5
5
points.
points.
I am now winning
Nice.
5-0. That is the end of my turn. it is now your turn. The bottom of the battle round.
It's a really good first turn. Just with that, oh man, that back and forth was really fun. And especially, as I said, like if you're used to it, then you can just breeze through all these phases and stuff. I can imagine these battles getting really, really intense.
But any 6s is devastating wound.
Which means it goes to mortal.
Becomes mortal wounds.
No, nothing. Well, the moment reroll.
Oh my god.
Wow.
Whoa.
Oh my goodness. So this is one of those
Jesus.
very lucky rolls. All of these turn into mortal wounds. I can't save a thing. 3 wounds left. He's gone.
Just like that.
Oh,
Dice
god.
tell stories. And we love stories of playing on tabletop.
You're going to love this even more because Stern Guard have a special rule.
Oh, right.
Bolter drill, once per battle in your shooting phase. After this unit is shot, if 1 or more enemy units were destroyed as a result of those attacks, this unit can shoot again.
Oh my goodness.
What the
so that means you're
hell?
gonna fire right now with him again?
I can choose to.
Why wouldn't you?
God.
So now I've got to consider, is it best to do it now or wait for... I'm not going to wait. I'm going to do their once per battle ability. I've killed something. I can shoot again, but I'm going to do your favorite thing to do.
Split fire. High risk, high reward.
Electing kind of the best guns for the job.
Yeah.
I think these two Stern Guard
Easily.
can take out that.
Okay, so what is split fire? Each individual weapon profile can be fired at a different enemy unit within its range. So you can use a different weapon, but it has to be at a different enemy unit. Okay.
Leaper. So I'm going to take my heavy bolter and fire at your barb gaunts. They hurt me, I'm going to try to hurt them back. From the heavy bolter into the barb gaunts, I'm hitting on 4s. Because I scored a critical hit with sustained
You got
1.
another roll?
I actually scored 2 hits. Looking for 3s.
2!
That's 2 of them. AP 1, however, you are slightly obscured with that statue.
Partly not visible.
Okay, let's see what the terrain does. Battlefield debris and statuary. If target model is not full visible to every model in the attacking unit. Oh, every model. Gain the benefit of cover, +1 to saving throw. Some caveats apply. Oh. I see.
If I fire all of my Terminators into the gaunts, there's a chance I might wipe you out and I can't make that charge. What this illustrates is that Warhammer 40k really is an objective game, not just a kill 'em game. In order to try to avoid outright killing them, I'm going to take my assault cannon. It's going to go into the barb gaunts. I am barely...
That is interesting. Yeah, because you can only charge into a unit that is, well, there and still alive. So you would actively choose to not attack them and wipe them out in order to be able to charge your units forward so you can get to an objective. Huh. I actually kind of like that little detail. It just adds more depth to the strategy of the game.
Any minus on that?
No minus.
No minus, so then my 5 up, which I got 2 of.
Jesus.
Woo! So you killed
Tyranids
2
rolling
more.
really well.
I'm actually gonna take from here and here because I'd like to make that charge from the Terminators a little bit harder.
A lot harder, actually. I am now over 11 inches away. Before we go to the charge phase, we have the star.
That's interesting. I mean, the fact that you can also choose which units end up dying is also a pretty big strategic advantage because you can choose, like he did there, to choose the units in the front, which just makes rolling the charge way more difficult. So they can't even like abuse that other strategy. Like you can actually counter them if they do, like wipe out a few of your guys too. Oh my god, just the back and forth here. 2 weapon profiles. When one weapon has 2 profiles, you choose only one to use. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I've lost a lot of guys. I've lost way more than you, but I'm not feeling like I'm that much disadvantaged yet. I've got lots to work with still.
I'm running
Yeah.
elites.
And every single one of those dead is a big deal.
It hurts. It hurts a lot. Ballistis las cannon.
I mean, that's one of the appeals of all the different kinds of factions and all the different kind of playstyles that they provide you. And like even there's a variety in the Space Marines themselves. I feel like there's really a playstyle that fits everyone.
To use one of the core rulebook stratagems available to everybody that allows me to re-roll a dice. Command re-roll to try to get that 5 because I don't want him to take much damage. Please don't. Give me 5. Give me 5.
And oh my god.
Good for you, Batman.
Dude.
D6+1
Okay, interesting. We even have movement
marker,
after fighting.
but you have to reach it. If you cannot do any of these things, you stand still.
You get basically 3 inches of extra movement as long as you can go into an enemy unit or take an objective.
Base to base, 1 inch and not base to base. Okay. So if it's not base to base, you can't do a melee strike.
It's time for the Tyranid special ability called Shadow in the Warp.
I don't
What?
quite like this.
I can say it differently. Shadow in the Shadow in the Warp is a once per game ability. I'm choosing to use it now because I think it's the time to do it. Every single unit in your army has to take a battle shock test.
Oh
now.
my god.
And it's at an additional -1 because of this neurotower being on the board.
Lieutenant,
Jesus.
I believe 6, 7.
Oh,
Really?
exactly 7.
Terminators!
Terminators?
Are you kidding me?
Wow,
Oh my
they're
god.
Librarian!
That's gonna suck.
Please,
Bruh.
come on, Librarian.
No!
Oh, you failed, sir! Oh, and the Apothecary! The cool Apothecary.
Wait,
it has OC9. Does it have OC0 now if you fail the battle shock test?
That's
Are you kidding me? Oh,
7.
just
That's
barely
-1.
7.
Goes to Next, the Screamer Killer is gonna double charge. It's gonna charge both units of Infernus Marines. I don't think I can fail this.
You can double charge?
Definitely not with a 10. All right, so I get 10 attacks. I'm gonna put 3 of them
What?
into the Infernus squad that has 1 guy
Oh
left.
my
That the
God,
remainder
they're
7
dead. They're
into the
so
other Infernus
dead.
squad. I'm gonna kill them all right here, right now. Oh, you did so good!
Oh,
You only
nice
killed- I only killed
saves.
2. 6 wounds at AP -1. Just give you 1 failure. Come on!
I don't want to.
Come on!
I don't want to.
Come on!
Legend of Norris. Legend of Norris.
Oh, he's
1.
Oh, it's just 1. So that's 2 damage, but you could still pass this on your Feel No Pain of a 5.
1 at a time.
1 at a time. It's more epic. First one, saves! Second one!
Oh
on, here we
my
go.
god. Oh my god.
He lives! He lives! Thank you for the game.
lieutenant just
I can
won't
see
die.
you have won the battlefield.
What an amazing, fantastic back and forth game. We hope that you've learned a lot from this How to Play 10th edition. Our final score is incredibly close.
That was actually such a great explanation of how the tabletop game is played. And honestly, I just wanted to come in here and learn like a few keywords just so I could recognize it. But we also saw here in this video that there are different strategies you can use, probably depending on like what kind of faction you're playing and like, you know, how it interacts with the opponent's faction. But like, we had that example of where they didn't want to eradicate that Tyranid swarm because then they could be able to like advance on a certain objective during the charge phase, which you wouldn't be able to do if there wasn't an enemy there. So yeah, there's a lot of like back and forth here, which I think is really cool, despite you not being able to play on your opponent's turn, but you kind of get to react and do rolls and stuff to save your guys. So ultimately, it really depends on the dice, I suppose. But there are certainly other ways that this game will reward you with like a very well laid out plan, as well as good use of stratagems and stuff like that. But yeah, that was neat. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.